Okay, so here is the Azure DevOps home screen. It shows that the Avery Cameron 35 organization, which is just a organization created for the purposes of this test. And we have a project called ENSE 475, and this is our class project, and this is for testing with CI and CD. And so when you click it, you get a little about this project. You can set up sort of README, and you can set up sort of project stats. And what we're going to look at is the CI/CD implementation, and that's with the pipelines in the sidebar here. And when you click on the pipelines, you're given an overview of pipeline success and different pipelines that you have running. And we created an API to test with CI/CD, and this is done similarly to our previous videos where we showed how to set up a Azure pipeline. And what we have here is a mini API build pipeline. And so if we look at the YAML file, here we go. It is a Node.js app, and its trigger is the master branch of our mini API repository, and then it creates a build using Ubuntu, and it installs. It just does a npm install and an npm build to sort of build our app. And so when we run this, which is just our previous run, it is a successful run. But if we add a failing, like a syntax error or a failing build, we'll see this run and we'll see it fail, and we'll be able to look at why that build failed as well. Yeah. So we're going to push a failing build here, and it's going to load up, and it's going to sort of demonstrate how Azure Pipelines gives you instant feedback and prepares you so that you know when a build fails, and you know what fails, why, and just sort of what part of your build pipeline failed. So we have a nice commit, failing build, and we can actually look at the job as it's running. And so it was looking at the code, and then this is just installing Node.js, which is that first bit of that YAML file. And this is the npm install and build. So it is just installing all our dependencies, and then it is going to build our application. And so it did the npm build, added 638 packages, and then it failed. And that's not unexpected. It's exactly what we were looking for. And we can look at this log and look into that, but we know that it was a failing build. So it just sort of gives you information on how that works. And so the next one we're going to do is we're going to do a testing sample. So we have tests, and we're going to do a failing test with a successful build. So first thing we're going to do is just fix our repository and fix this build error, so that we'll see once we've identified the build error, and we can fix it, and then it'll run and it'll succeed in this build. Yeah, so we'll push a passing build, and we can watch it run and build and watch just the successful stage pop up. And so we have one new run. So what happened there was the commit was pushed, it noticed the commit, and it triggered this build. So this provides you with your fast feedback cycle that you're looking for. It increases quality, and it increases visibility of errors as well, as we mentioned previously. And quickly here it'll pass. And then now it's just finishing the job and does whatever cleanup it has to afterwards. So we have a passing build, And now if I edit this YAML file, we have tests that we can run, and we have some failing tests. And we can run this with a simple script, npm test. This is basic JavaScript or TypeScript npm running. And so we can save this npm file, and we can say update YAML added test execution. And so we're going to commit this directly to the master branch, and we'll hit save, and it'll commit for us. And if we look back at this, we should see a new run popping up, and we'll just be able to load this new run. And if we look at here, the commit message was successful build failing test. This is just to show what happens when a test fails. Here you'll notice that the job action is just called command line. We can specify what the display name is just to add sort of more clarity to what we're doing. And here in the command line, our test run, we can see that it expected the number of users to be 4, but this was not 4, so it failed, and it expected 4 rather, and it received 5. So our test suites, we can see that we have 2 failed, 2 total passed, and then we have 2 failed tests, 4 passed, and 6 total tests. We can see the time it took to run those tests as well. And so when we fix those tests, we can do another commit, and we'll do a passing commit. And so another job will pop up here once the commit is pushed to the repository, to the master branch. And it'll pop up here, and we'll see a passing test. And this just gives you sort of more coverage. It lets you understand where your tests are failing, and it lets you know if your changes broke anything that you didn't realize or didn't intend to. And so if we look in here, we can look at this command line job. It hasn't run anything yet since it's still building. And we can see that this command line is going to run our npm test. And so it uses Jest, which is just our testing framework that we used. And we can see 6 passed, 6 total. And so it is a successful build. And if you were to add code coverage to the YAML file, which we have in one of our other pipelines, you'd be able to see that as well. So I believe that is potentially this one. No. Here we go. Code coverage. So we can look at that it's 69% code coverage, and it missed 1 branch. And so we have, we have 4 out of 9 missed instructions. So we have 69% coverage of instructions, and then we have 1 missed branch of 2, so we have 50% coverage there. And we can just sort of get a general overview. And if you were to add code coverage analysis to your YAML file, you'd get this as well. And so, yeah, and you can also use that with Jest as well, and that should be able to be shown. So this code coverage tool, this task, we can take this YAML file and we can bring it into our other pipeline, and we can see the code coverage for this pipeline. And so this is going to use Jest's coverage tool, and once it runs, it should provide us with some feedback of how well our tests do for coverage, if we're hitting that sort of 80% target, or sort of are we covering the test cases that we need to or that we intend to. And this is helpful if you're adding code. You can have failure triggers based off of not enough code coverage. Or you can look at the manual deployment side of things, and if we look back at the job, hopefully the code coverage, that was a misclick. The code coverage didn't appear, but that was it might have printed in the steps of the job. Here we go, actually. So we have 66% coverage, and we can look at 100% coverage here, and 100% coverage in a couple others, and just the differences here. So it will give you that coverage, but if you wanted it in that main screen, you'd have to add it to the YAML file. And so the next step we're going to do is deployment, and we'll be back once we have deployed our code to the cloud, and then we can show that addition to the YAML file. And now that we have passing tests, once all the tests pass, we can deploy properly to the cloud.